Back in 2020, this mother was arrested and tasered while wearing handcuffs for refusing to wear a mask at her son's high school football game. This woman was arrested and choked for not wearing a mask. A man paddleboarding in California was pulled out of the water and arrested for defying lockdowns. This mother, who had a mask on that wasn't covering her nose, was slammed to the ground in a New York subway in front of her 5-year-old son. The video is brutal. Well, now she has a $10 million lawsuit against New York City. And if 2020 taught us anything, it's that Americans do not know how to properly defend their rights. We saw people arrested, businesses shut down, religious ceremonies broken up, and it showed how poor of a job schools do at teaching civics. Because Americans should know the structure of the court system, as well as the tools available to them, like affidavits, conditional consents, and notices of liability. It's why I personally teach our students a course on the U.S. Constitution, because we owe it to our kids to teach them how to defend their rights. Check out my private homeschool community and my books on free speech, the Second Amendment, the congressionally documented history of fake news, how the banking system was corrupted, healthy living, morality, and so much more. ClassicalLearner.com. 2020 really was the great revealer. It showed us everything and taught us so much. And it was an interesting time because, and this is why, as hard as it is good to forgive your neighbors. Forgive, don't forget, but it is good to forgive. And the reason for that is all of us were thrusted into this psychologically stressful situation that the majority of people were in no way prepared for. All of a sudden, the sky was falling, right? Stuart Little, the sky is falling, is actually a really good metaphor for what happened, because people turned on the news and all of a sudden there were these videos of people. Remember these propaganda videos out of China? You turn on the news, you go on social media, and they showed people in China walking in the streets, and they would literally pass out and just croak right there in the middle of the street. And they said, this situation's coming to a theater near you. And then the next thing you know, President Trump's on national television. 15 days, right? It tells 15 days, we got to shut it down. Of course, with all types of tyranny, they always say, it's just temporary. It's 15 days. Or when they implemented the federal income tax in 1913, they said, this is just a tax on rich people. The rest of you won't even have to pay federal income tax. Just let us get our foot in the door. Well, they said 15 days, just let us get our foot in the door. And we let them get the foot in the door. And I tweeted that day. It's actually my most retweeted tweet ever, which shows a lot of people got it. In big, bold letters, I wrote, they are going to use this to take your rights. Don't buy into the fear. But man, did people buy into the fear. But you had this psychological test, this incredibly stressful situation thrusted upon every person in society at once. People who were in all different types of psychological states. People who were already hurting mentally. People who had anxiety, who had depression, people who looked to authority, right? We got a clear view from literally a view of their face when you walked out in public, that the people that would cover their face and would yell at you for not covering yours, they looked to authority to protect them from perceived danger. People, we learned you had neighbors that would willingly load you on a train. We always heard people say, how do you get to the point where you're okay with loading neighbors onto trains? Well, we saw it. And ironically, the derogatory term they used for people that were standing up against this situation was they would say that you were part of a historical group. That was all. You know what group I'm talking about. You can't say the group, right? You were me and Mr. Mustache and his group, right? They would say, you're part of his group. And you go, I don't think you understand what occurred with that, but fine. All right, so you had everyone thrusted into this psychological situation. But it not only revealed the truth within our neighbors, it revealed the truth within the system. And to me, it was a great learning opportunity. And March of 2020 was actually, that's the last time I had a drink. People started drinking. I had stopped. That's the last time I had a drink. And the reason for that was I had already cut back to where I wasn't drinking a lot because I didn't want my children to grow up thinking that that's what your role models do, right? I wanted to be a good role model for my children. And then when everything first went down, I didn't know if it really was a health situation I had to be worried about. So I said, okay, well, I'll just be as healthy as I can be. Now, I sure as didn't wear a mask. No way. I didn't go along with that. I don't do tyranny. I do not capitulate to tyranny. But I did make a decision that I would try to live healthy. So I got a lot of vitamin D. I worked out. And I stopped drinking alcohol. And then after a few months, I was like, this is great. I'm never going back. Like, I love the role model I'm becoming for my children. And that was a microcosm of the extreme personal responsibility I started to take. Because when you looked around, you saw how the system was leveraging people's situations against them. You saw how they didn't make you do it, right? They didn't make you... The government never sent anyone masks. They just leveraged situations against people. They said, oh, well, you can't work. You can't work your job without a mask. You can't go to the grocery store without a mask. So now people that had mortgages, they need that job. They were in a bad situation, especially if they didn't have skills, right? They didn't have other options. It's a bad situation where you have a mortgage, you owe money to the bank, and, you're scared. I got to keep a roof over my kid's head. I got to get them food. And now your job's telling you, you have to do this, or you have to violate your own body, right? I mean, think about it. It's a terrible thing that occurred. But people felt desperate. And then the other situation where people were told, you have to cover your face just to get food, right? So to me, it became a big learning situation. And to me, it was, we're going to put family first. We're going to reject their disgusting culture, their disgusting hookup culture. I was already married, but, you marry, you have lots of kids, you live within your means, don't keep up with the Joneses, stay out of debt, grow your own food. So my wife and I told her, I said, we really need to take control of our lives. Look at everything going on in the world. The market was going up. It was great because we owned a house. I had a big mortgage on it. Well, I said, this is easy. The market's going up. We're going to sell our house. We're going to move down south, and we're not going to have a mortgage. And that's what we did. And I don't have a mortgage. And it's such a blessing. Like God puts us in the situations we're supposed to be in. I'll talk about that on the back end, if I remember, but I want to get through this. So and my spiritual awakening was a big part of this, by the way, and growing closer to God. And I'll talk about that. But you saw how the system leveraged people. And my wife and I, we decided to sell our house. And that was, I don't know, around August of 2020. The whole thing started in March, and at the same time, I looked her dead in the eyes. I said, let's have a baby. I said, it's such a beautiful time to be alive, and she agreed, and now that baby's here, and such a blessing. And we sold our house, and we started our journey down south, and we were able to get a house without a mortgage, and of course, I had the business growing at the time where I was starting with the books. It was actually, I want to get my timeline right. It was actually July of 2021. I had started writing the books, but July of 2021, I got onto TikTok and I started really going hard with social media, and that would ultimately change my life. And So I was growing the business, and we moved across the country, sell the house, live within our means. We moved down south, and we're having children and taking control of our life. And now we homestead, we grow our own food. We have chickens. Our chickens lay. I have 18 birds. They lay more eggs than I know what to do with. It's amazing, the abundance in this world. And we have a beautiful garden, and we grow our food. But to me, it was the great revealer. And it revealed what the system is and what is required for us to live free. And what it also revealed to me was how inadequately prepared the average person is at defending their rights. We saw mothers grabbed in the New York City subway and slammed to the ground in front of their 5-year-olds. We saw people paddleboarding with no one around in the ocean and getting arrested. We saw mothers handcuffed at high school football games. I mean, the level of tyranny that we saw, and not just in America, just all around the world, was disgraceful. But it's easy to say, oh, look at them. No, I said, wow, people really don't know how to defend their rights. People really don't know how to defend their rights. And of course, it's a time of great awakening, so people are learning all different types of things about defending our rights. But I knew that the reason people don't know how to defend their rights is because everyone comes through the school system, is because the school system's not teaching civics properly. They're not teaching people the Constitution properly. They're not teaching people how to defend their rights. Because people should know what an affidavit is, how to file an affidavit, that's a sworn testimony, and that if anyone files an affidavit against your affidavit and they're proven to be lying, they've committed perjury, and we all know the penalty for that, right? People should know what a conditional consent is. Sure, I would be happy to do what you want me to do if you can first show me that, what you want me to do is safe. What you want me to do is, what's the word I'm looking for? Effective. I'd be happy to do that if you can first show me. And, oh, I need you to sign this document. No, you've asked me to do something, and now I'm presenting you with paperwork. You don't want to sign it? I'll send it again, and I'll send it a third time. We're creating paper trails, right? Notices of liability, putting someone on notice that if my rights are violated, then I'm presenting documentation that I'm not holding just the institution, but you personally liable for what's happening here. People should know how to do these things. And I was so happy because I'm teaching, I put together a course. I taught it live and I do a pre-recorded. And when I was doing the course and I was teaching the students about conditional consents, I actually had parents that were sitting in and watching my course on the Constitution and civics. And they had actually successfully carried out a conditional consent, multiple parents, at their places of work to avoid doing the things that they were making everyone do, whether that be covering their face or that other thing they were trying to get everyone to do. So the school system does a poor job of teaching young people their rights. So I wanted to create a course and lay a foundation for teaching young people their rights. But I also don't like to just talk about my courses. When I do this stuff, I like to give you the tools so you don't have to use my course. So teach your kids about affidavits, about conditional consents, and about notices of liability. You're starting to arm them with the tools. Now, obviously, we need more education than that, right? Like more than my course. And I'm going to be bringing people in and more and more people teaching about common law, teaching about all of these things people learned about in the last few years, right? Where the Organic Act of 1871, the Corporation of the United States of America versus the government, the creation of our birth certificates, the trust that is created in our name, sold on the stock market. Allegedly, could it be? Algorithms don't hate me, right? We need young people to learn this stuff, but we have to give them a foundation in their civics. So we teach them these basic concepts. We teach them about the actual court system. Like, young people should know. How many Americans have any idea about the structure of the American court system? Like, they should know that you have the 94 district courts across the United States of America, the 13 appellate courts, appeals courts across the United States of America, and then the Supreme Court. People should know that district courts look at facts of the matter in a case. Appeals court looks at the process. So if you have a judge or someone that does not give you proper due process, you document that effectively, you take that to appeals court, and you get the whole thing thrown out on the process. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. And then the Supreme Court, which is specifically, they look at everything, but they're looking at constitutionality. People should be taught this stuff from a young age on a mass level, but we as parents can teach this to our kids on a micro level. We could teach it at our home. We could teach it in our co-ops. We could teach it in the courses that we teach. I feel like at this point I am, in terms of the faces of homeschooling in America, I'm up there, right? I've recently came to that realization upon speaking with a few people and them saying to me, you're like the face of homeschooling. And to me, that sounds crazy, right? Because I was just a guy and but anyway, I have a responsibility to be a leader in this space, and I have to be very careful with my words, and I have to be very responsible. And one of the things that I grapple with, and I'm so glad I'm doing this long form again. I'm so glad I have, because it's hard to communicate all this stuff in the 1-minute videos, but I get so much traction in the 1-minute videos where it's so much easier to get 500,000, 1 million views, that's the avenue I have to spend most of my energy on, because that's how I reach people. That's how I get people. Ultimately, I want to funnel people into Homeschools Connected, because then I'm growing my revenue. I could take the revenue and I could hire people. I am currently employing a guy who was a former mechanic at NASA. He's an industrial engineer. I have a kindergarten, someone making kindergarten lessons, a kindergarten director, right? So I'm working on all of these different things. I just secured a carpenter who's going to be putting together a carpentry curriculum. I'm paying all these tech guys to do the website, to be our user portal. I have to pay attorneys, right? So I need to funnel people in to get revenue so that I could continue to develop curriculum. So that's the business model that I have to operate under. But I am frustrated because I also have a responsibility to be a parent educator and an effective social media influencer so that I'm leading people in the right way. And on the one hand, I can make videos about all the corrupt things in the world, and that's important. Like, it's important to call out the corruption of institutions. It's important to call out the corruption of the medical system, right? It's important to call out the corruption of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. It's important to call out the corruption of the public school system, right? I don't think anyone's done that more than me. College Fix does a good job of that. But at the same time, it's important that we have American institutions. I don't want to destroy American institutions. And I know people have it in their mind like, oh, we don't need the government. Well, power abhors a vacuum, right? If you get rid of the government, what you get is cartels. So it's easy to, and I get when people aren't like influencers, it's easy for them to say, yes, screw the government. We don't need the government. There'll always be a government. If you have 3 people in a room and it's time to decide what's for dinner, you have a government, right? And if you don't have police departments, for example, what you're going to get is cartels. That's what happens in, let's say, in Mexico, right? What happens is there's a vacuum of power, and you have these groups that start to vie for power. And usually what happens is, and this is why these groups are actually liked a lot of times in their community, you'll have crime, you'll have petty theft, you'll have people that target children, and these groups will come in and they'll actually take care of that. They'll come in and say, no, that's not happening on our watch. And they'll give money to local educational groups so you can educate your children, right? These are cartels. Like, look what happens in Mexico. Like, this is what occurs. There'll always be a government. And in America, you know, as much as I want to, like, you're torn because you see all the bad things these institutions do. But the truth is, in America, we have fantastic bones in our government. Like the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, these are great bones. Now, there's been layers of corruption over them, right? But we have those bones. And as a responsible influencer, what I want to teach people is you need to take your government back. And to do that, you have to understand the tools that are available to you. You have to, don't just say, oh, the court system's corrupt. The court system's a tool, it's a hammer. The problem is no one knows how to use the hammer. District attorneys know how to use the hammer. You don't know how to use the hammer. You got to learn to use the hammer. We got to teach our kids to use the hammer, right? We got to learn how to use these systems. You know, I talk about the school system being corrupt a lot. I talk about the school system being corrupt. Well, there's also great opportunity there. Everyone knows that the perverted stuff, I'll say, being taught in school is wildly inappropriate and wildly unpopular. Don't let them make you think that it's popular. It's not, right? Well, isn't that a great opportunity? Oh, and the race stuff, right? The CR filler T. Yes, CR filler T. Talking around the algorithms. But this stuff is wildly unpopular. So there's a massive opportunity. People talk, why do people care? I mean, yeah, care about the presidency, right? But that stuff is bought and paid for. But what you can do is you could run for your local school board. You can be the superintendent of your school board. And if you run on those two talking points, that you're going to get rid of the perverted stuff and you're going to get rid of the race stuff in school, you'll win. The messaging is so simple. And every one of us has the ability to do that. We need good Americans running for school boards. There's laws, and then there is the implementation of those laws, right? So if the sheriff decides he's not, or enforcement, if the sheriff decides he's not going to enforce a law, it doesn't really matter. This is one of the things that George Soros figured out, where he pays to take over local sheriff's offices all over the United, and district attorneys. And then it's all about, yeah, the laws are nice, but only the laws that are enforced are really the law, right? So, well, why aren't more people running for local sheriff office or your sheriff's office, right? So we have the ability to, through civics, through understanding our rights, through understanding the government that was given to us, right? Ben Franklin said that we've given you a republic if you can keep it. We got to keep it, right? Everyone wants to throw out the government. What are you replacing it with? Because you throw out the government right now, I can promise you with all this corruption, we're not going to have something as good as the Bill of Rights. We have recourse, and we have to be smart enough, and we have to be vigilant enough and responsible enough to take it. And in order to do that, we have to start educating the next generation properly. And that's what I'm trying to teach people to do. That's what I know I'm teaching young people to do. And that's what you as a parent can do. Whether you're a parent or not, you can do with personal responsibilities. So hit the like button, share, comment,
Really appreciate it. Subscribe. Helps my algorithm. www.classicallearner.com.